What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS value plays for the Pebble Beach Pro-AM. Gonna break down the Draftkings board priced $8,000 and below and go over 4 of my salary saving plays that I'll not only be getting to try and squeeze in an extra stud or two into a lineup, and also to try and get some of that much needed ownership leverage towards the bottom end of the board. So without further ado, a lot to get into. Let's go ahead and get this thing rocking. First up this week, we've got ourselves Davis Riley, $7,800. So towards the top of the range here, right under $8,000. But what I like about Davis Riley is he's the lowest owned player here. So 8.4% might not seem like a super low owned play, especially compared to the other 3 options that we'll be getting to. But when you compare him to a Scott Stallings, he's actually right about half the ownership, way lower owned than a Shelln, nearly half as owned as a Nick Hardy. You're certainly looking at a pivot with Davis Riley. And the one thing that's really carrying a lot of those other players' ownership numbers, first off, just the finishes from a Scott Stallings, right? He's been exceptional. The approach play, not so much. But look at this. Robbie Shelln gaining nearly 2/3 of a stroke per round, getting over a stroke per round there for Nick Hardy in terms of his approach play. But Davis Riley kind of, quietly still going out there and gaining close to half a stroke per round. And that's despite being in quite a little downturn here, quite a little bit of a slump. You could even argue had a missed cut, only a 65th the first time before that. So made the cut, but really didn't do anything with it. 46th, same sort of performance. 27th, okay. 21st, what we're kind of used to seeing from a Davis Riley. So certainly hasn't been his sharpest self. But that's why we're getting him at $7,800, and it's also why he's only going to be 8.4% owned. And when you take a look at the metrics, he hasn't been nearly as poor as I think a lot of people would expect. He's hit quite a few water balls. That has tanked his off the tee play. Around the green, he's always going to be a slight negative. So around a Pebble Beach where you have the small greens, where you're going to see a few more shots around the green, that could be a little bit worrisome. But the putting is really the X factor. When he can marry up the approach play and the putting on the same week, is when you're going to see that top 20 finish, that top 10 finish, or perhaps even getting into contention like we saw a handful of times there in 2022. So he's a high upside player. I'd argue pretty much just as much volatility as like a Shelln, Hardy and Stallings, because sure, they've been a little bit more consistent of late, but over a long-term sample size, all of those players are just as volatile as somebody like a Davis Riley, if not more, for somebody like a Robbie Shelln, a Scott Stallings, for example. So though they've been in a little bit of a hot streak, right? That's why guys like a Shelln are more expensive, a Stallings are getting the attention that they are. I think that Davis Riley is the one piece of value here in a vacuum. And then considering price, all of the sort of other factors, I think he's by far the best play in this range. So 8.4%, definitely something I'll be getting well over the field on. Next up, we've got ourselves Troy Merritt, who I don't think I've ever talked him up on the channel here before. He's just such an under-the-radar, unsexy pick. Not typically somebody you're looking at for top-end upside, but loves this course for whatever reason. You can see he's absolutely torn it up here around Pebble Beach. So if you take a look at the record, 4th last year, 16th, 25th, 8th place there 5 years ago. So just, again, incredible track record here around Pebble, their 3-course setup. You take a look at the recent form, it's also been pretty decent. He has a few missed cuts in there, so it's why I think the price tag is low. I think it's also why you're only seeing right about 6% ownership on him. He had the missed cut, 65th, again, just hardly made the cut, didn't do anything with it. Another missed cut, but he 3rd place, right back there about 8 events ago. So he's shown the upside. The shots gain metrics also aren't that pretty, so I guess I understand why a ton of people aren't getting there, but he's about neutral with the ball striking. That's kind of just what he does. Around the green and putting are never really his specialties. So overall, you're getting your average Troy Merritt, coming in with his average form at a golf course that he pretty much always comes up to and just smashes at. So for me, I'm not expecting that much to change. I would expect to see another made cut, probably another top 25 finish for Troy Merritt. And he's 6.5% owned. He's at the bottom end of the 7K range where you have just so many unknown prospects or just so many inconsistent players. I mean, poppers like a Juan, right? Like an Eckroat, for example. I'd say even poppers like a Harry Hall that we've seen have a few top-end finishes, but guys that just miss a bunch of cuts that haven't really done anything at Pebble Beach before, priced around just the Pebble Beach absolute ATM. So I'm hoping that this ownership number stays low. I do expect him to kind of get steamed up because of some of that event history. People are going to, completely turn a blind eye to that. But still, if he gets steamed up to like 8% ownership, maybe 8.5%, 9% at the very worst case, that's still something I'd be willing to get that leverage to, right? That's not going to be too outrageous like we've seen a few guys steamed up over the past few weeks. Next up, we've got ourselves Satoshi Kodaira at $6,800. And these last two picks, you can see Kodaira here. We're also going to talk about James Hahn there at $6,600 here in just a few moments. Both of these plays going to be mega low owned. So 1.2% on a Kodaira, 1.4% down there for somebody like a James Hahn, and arguably some of the better cut equity that you're going to find. You can see 56% up there for a player down here in the 6K range, and then a whopping 57% for James Hahn. When you take a look at the shots gained metrics, you'll get a good idea of why. Kodaira over his last 36, gaining 0.6 strokes per round on approach. And then go down here to James Hahn, he's gaining 0.86 shots per round, and he's gaining a bunch off the tee as well. Now, while James Hahn hasn't played that often, he's been dealing with a little bit of lingering injury concerns. So he hasn't had a ton of logged rounds over the last 4 or 5 months. When he's played, he's been sharp. And though the recent form, as he's starting to try and get back into playing shape, has been a little bit scratchy to start, I'm glad that we've seen him out there playing. So I know I'm skipping between these two players here, but look at this. James Hahn, missed cut, but at least he's been playing, 27th back there. A lot of these events haven't had shots gained metrics, so they haven't really impacted a lot of the modeling, which is why he's still projecting as high as he is, so on and so forth. But that's the kind of form I'm projecting him for, right? To return to his baseline. And his baseline is a much better player than $6,600 for this field. You can see even the event history, he's played here over the years, so at least he has experience around this track. A few missed cuts, a top 26 finish there back then. Just overall, I think that he should probably be getting a little bit of steam here just because he is so mispriced. Because when he is playing well, you can see he's a top 5 Pebble Beach fit for this course. Right, so if he was coming in with any semblance of form, any semblance of a pulse at this point, I think James Hahn would be getting a ton of steam. Right, he plays well out west, played well last year for this swing, really capstoned by his performance at the Waste Management, where he nearly ended up winning that golf tournament. Pretty decent on the POA surface. You can see actually right at his baseline there. You can see just slightly lower than it, 0.08 shots lower, so nothing really to speak of there. Just overall, I think a great play. And going back to Kodaira, it's the same kind of thing. We haven't seen him play that often, right? So we go up here to the recent form. This is reason why I'm trying to lump these two together here. Where is he at, Kodaira, right? 53rd last week, made the cut, missed cut, but before that, hadn't played really the entire fall stretch, at least on the PGA Tour side. But when we've seen Kodaira, just like a James Hahn, he's been absolutely striping it, gaining 0.6 shots per round, gaining slightly off the tee. And though the putting stats aren't ever going to be a huge positive for Kodaira, on this surface specifically, you can see the POA surface, he's slightly better than his baseline. So he's right about a neutral putter. Keep yourself in position. You got him at a short track, so his lack of distance isn't nearly as much an issue in both the cases, right? It's a little speculative, right? You've got injury concerns with Hahn. Kodaira was dealing with bereavement. He lost a close family member to him, so took some time away from golf. It's reasonable to expect them to be rusty, right? But they both have played 2 events. So I think now that rust should start to come off. And when it does, I think you're looking at 2 players that are just heavily underpriced. And of course, essentially coming in with no ownership at this point. All right, fellas, that is all I've got for the value picks. Before you hopping out of here, go ahead, comment down below your top DFS play priced $8,000 and below on Draftkings. It's kind of a tie for me between a Davis Riley and then, of course, a few of the guys like a James Hahn, Satoshi Kodaira. But just for the sake of the video, I'll go with Satoshi. I think this is a week for him to go out there and break out. But go ahead, comment down below who you're taking priced $8,000 and below. And I'll catch you guys tonight for our live stream. It'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern time. There we'll be going through the weather, all of your live questions, whether it's for DFS, prize picks, whatever you guys want to touch on for this week. Can be outright betting as well. We'll go through some of the DFS plays that I think maybe getting a little bit more steamed up closer to lock, but go through some of the chalk, cash plays. We'll go through the prize picks board individually. Pretty much just everything you need to know. So make sure to stop on by for that. There will be a link in the description of the video to it. It'll be again at 7 p.m. Eastern tonight. And you can drop any question in there, right? It doesn't have to be about what we're going over on the stream. If you want to talk about, top 6 each way bets, that sort of thing, we can talk that. You want to talk about the underdog fantasy board when it comes to that from the prop side, feel free to ask questions on that side. I pretty much touch every single market when it comes to golf. So no question that I'll turn down at that point. I'm looking forward to it, guys. Make sure to smash that like button before hopping out of here as well. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss any of that content in the future. I appreciate the support, guys. I appreciate you guys coming by, consuming the content, being as supportive as you guys always are over the last few years at this point that I've been doing this. Appreciate it, and let's go ahead and get this cash this weekend.